Not for fame, not for money, but because the scale of what he was seeing demanded attention. He reached out anonymously to journalists and law enforcement, piecing together what he had discovered. His information would lead to one of the largest investigations into an underground market the city had ever seen. But the journey was dangerous. Black markets are protected by fear, loyalty, and violence. One misstep, one revealed identity could mean ruin or worse. It started with minor anomalies, packages going missing, instructions changing at the last minute, a sudden increase in the number of security cameras in certain buildings. The driver began noticing people watching him, a stranger lingering too long on the sidewalk, a shadow moving in the alley. He felt the weight of unseen eyes, the tension of knowing he was part of something much larger than himself. Experts in law enforcement later described his role as critical. People often overlook the smallest actors in these networks. One investigator said, "Delivery drivers, couriers, even warehouse staff, they can see things the masterminds think are invisible." And he saw everything. Every day, he faced a choice: remain silent and continue to make a modest living, or risk everything to shine a light on a system designed to stay in darkness. He knew the risks. The people running the black market were ruthless, unpredictable, and willing to go to extreme lengths to protect their operations. But curiosity, combined with a sense of justice, pushed him forward. He began carefully collecting evidence, photographs, package labels, delivery logs. He tracked patterns, mapped routes, and slowly, meticulously, he built a picture of an empire operating in plain sight. By the time he was ready to speak out, the network he had documented stretched across multiple cities, touching industries, families, and institutions in ways no one could have imagined. And yet, he remained anonymous. Every contact with journalists was encrypted. Every step forward was measured. What began as a curious observation would evolve into one of the most significant law enforcement operations of the decade. A network so large, so well hidden, that authorities initially struggled to comprehend its scope. And at the heart of it all, an ordinary delivery driver had become the key witness, the invisible hand guiding investigators into a labyrinth no one had mapped before. As the city continued its rhythm outside, unaware of the storm brewing in shadows, he realized something profound. Sometimes, the most ordinary people uncover the most extraordinary truths. And sometimes it is only through courage, curiosity, and quiet perseverance that the systems built to hide reality are finally exposed. The deliveries that once seemed ordinary now felt like walking into a different world. Each package was a clue, each address a puzzle piece. The driver began to notice patterns: warehouses in industrial zones, apartments in quiet neighborhoods, packages labeled with codes that changed every week. It wasn't chaos. It was a carefully orchestrated system designed to be invisible, to hide in plain sight. At first, he questioned his own perception. Maybe he was imagining connections, seeing patterns where none existed. But the evidence became undeniable. A shipment of electronics that never seemed to appear in any store, documents that hinted at fraudulent identities, parcels labeled as consumer goods that carried items he couldn't name. It was a network far larger than anything the city, or even the police, had anticipated. And it wasn't just local. The more he observed, the more he realized how global the operation was. Packages arrived from overseas addresses, routed through unsuspecting shipping hubs. The black market didn't just rely on secrecy. It relied on ordinary systems, on couriers like him, on the blind trust of people who believed they were part of everyday commerce. The closer he got, the more dangerous it became. He started noticing surveillance cameras not present before, strangers lingering too long near pickup points, unfamiliar faces watching from shadows. For the first time, the thrill of discovery was tempered with fear. One night, while making a routine drop, he noticed a group of men approaching. Their gaze was not friendly. The driver's heart pounded. Every instinct screamed that he had crossed an invisible line. But he had a choice: run and lose the trail of evidence, or proceed carefully and document what he could. He chose the latter. Every action was deliberate, measured. Like walking a tightrope over a pit he couldn't see the bottom of. As he continued, the human dimension became impossible to ignore. Inside one warehouse, he glimpsed young workers, barely out of their teens, packing boxes in grueling conditions for meager pay. Elsewhere, families were drawn in unknowingly, receiving shipments that implicated them in criminal activity without their knowledge. I never realized how many ordinary people were caught in this, he later reflected in a confidential interview with investigators. It wasn't just criminals. It was my neighbors, my city, my community, and they had no idea what was happening around them. Experts in organized crime later explained how black markets like this survive. They rely on the ordinary, one analyst said. The people who process the packages, drive the trucks, accept the deliveries, they are the invisible backbone, and it makes them nearly impossible to detect without inside testimony. The driver had become that testimony, and with every route, every package logged, he pieced together a map of a network that had remained hidden in plain sight for years. It wasn't immediate. Months of observation, careful documentation, and encrypted communications with journalists and law enforcement built toward the first breakthrough. One particular delivery stood out, a shipment meant to cross the border with what appeared to be counterfeit pharmaceuticals. The shipment was meticulously labeled to appear legitimate, but the driver recognized subtle inconsistencies, wrong labels, misrouted invoices, suspicious codes. He recorded it, documented the route, and reported it anonymously. Investigators who received the information were stunned. One remarked, "We had suspected whistleblowers and insiders in criminal networks often face immense psychological pressure, balancing moral responsibility with personal safety." The driver's experience was a textbook example: isolation, fear, and the heavy responsibility of holding the secrets of an entire hidden economy running in parallel to the legitimate one. Billions of dollars moving with precision, almost invisible to the public eye. Law enforcement faced an impossible challenge. Unlike ordinary investigations, this one couldn't rely solely on surveillance cameras or informants. The network was decentralized, flexible, and ruthless. Every lead had to be verified, every trace confirmed. And at the center of it all, guiding the authorities with inside knowledge, was the delivery driver. He became both a witness and a mapmaker, documenting every route, every shipment, every irregularity. Each piece of information was shared through encrypted channels, every word measured to avoid detection. The risk of exposure was constant. One wrong move could alert the network, jeopardizing not only the investigation, but his own life. Weeks turned into months as law enforcement built their strategy. Packages were traced, addresses mapped, and operatives identified. Then came the first coordinated raids. It was the first time the driver saw the direct impact of his efforts. Officers moved silently through warehouses and apartments, uncovering hidden compartments, stacks of illegal goods, and documentation that tied multiple operators together. The scene was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Thousands of dollars worth of goods were seized, but the human element hit harder. Young workers, unaware of the larger criminal context, were frightened and confused. Families discovered that loved ones were involved in ways they never imagined. Investigators later described the raids as delicate operations. Every building we entered could have exploded into violence, one agent said. But thanks to the intelligence we received, we were able to dismantle parts of the network with minimal risk. The delivery driver remained anonymous, watching from the shadows, realizing that his quiet observations had sparked action he never could have imagined. As the network began to unravel, the human cost became painfully clear. Arrests were made, yes, but not all participants were hardened criminals. Some were desperate, some naive, and some trapped in circumstances beyond their control. The driver, once a silent observer, now carried the weight of their fates. He questioned himself constantly. Did exposing the network save lives, or did it simply shift the danger elsewhere? Could he have done more to warn those caught in the machinery? Psychologists later described this as a common struggle among whistleblowers. The tension between moral duty and the unintended consequences of revealing the truth. "I didn't expect it to affect real people like this," he confessed. "I thought I was exposing a system, not lives." Just when investigators thought they had the network cornered, a surprising revelation emerged. Some of the operations were being protected by corrupt officials and businesses, embedded in layers of legality that made tracing them nearly impossible. The black market was not just street-level operations, it had tendrils in legitimate commerce, in companies that appeared innocent, had gained momentum. But the full scope of the black market remained elusive. Every shipment seized, every operator apprehended, revealed another layer of the network, like peeling back a digital onion. And through it all, the driver remained a quiet witness, a guide, and a moral compass in a world teetering between legality and criminal ingenuity. As the city continued its daily rhythm outside, unaware of the chaos unfolding in hidden warehouses and shadowed alleyways, one truth became clear: the smallest roles can hold the greatest power. And the delivery driver, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in courage, had changed the course of an entire network forever. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that what the delivery driver had uncovered was far more than a city-wide operation. The network extended across borders, spanning continents, moving goods and money through invisible channels, often hidden in plain sight. What had once seemed like a localized shadow economy now revealed itself as a global machine, organized, efficient, and ruthless. Packages traced to distant countries revealed the same level of precision he had seen: locally coded labels, misrouted invoices, untraceable payment methods. The sophistication was staggering. It was not just a black market, it was a meticulously designed system built to withstand scrutiny, reliant on the blind trust of ordinary people and the quiet work of couriers like him. The higher the network reached, the greater the stakes. Law enforcement discovered that some operations were connected to organized crime syndicates with international reach. Intercepted shipments contained dangerous contraband, some highly illegal, some terrifyingly sophisticated in nature. For the delivery driver, the stakes became intensely personal. He had entered this world out of curiosity and a desire to understand. Now every route he navigated, every package he documented, could carry consequences far beyond his control. A misstep could alert powerful people who did not hesitate to use violence to protect their interests. He became a ghost, invisible but hyper-aware. Every pedestrian on the street, every parked car, every unknown face was a potential threat. Yet he continued, compelled by the knowledge that he was the thread connecting the shadows to the light. Investigators were now grappling with more than just stolen goods or counterfeit items. Entire families and communities were implicated without their knowledge. Businesses, unknowingly involved in shipping routes or handling packaging, faced legal and financial peril. The driver saw it all in microcosm, the human consequences of a system built to exploit the ordinary. Experts in organized crime noted that networks like these thrive because they are carefully insulated from direct exposure. Most participants are ordinary people, one analyst explained. The black market functions because the average person is unknowingly complicit. That's why inside witnesses, like this delivery driver, are so rare and so valuable. The driver experienced near misses that could have ended everything. At one warehouse, a supervisor noticed discrepancies in labeling. At another, a guard questioned his frequent visits. Each encounter was a test of composure, a negotiation of trust, and a high-stakes balancing act between observation and survival. Every night, he reflected on the choices he had made. Was the risk worth it? Could the exposure of this network truly prevent harm, or would it simply push the operations further underground, making them harder to track in the future? Psychologists later described this as the paradox of whistleblowers. The courage to act is intertwined with a deep, ongoing burden of doubt and anxiety. Months into the investigation, the first tangible international breakthrough occurred. A shipment, traced from the city's docks to a neighboring country, was intercepted mid-transit. Authorities discovered falsified invoices, mislabeled goods, and an organized chain of operatives spanning several countries. The delivery driver's meticulous documentation was instrumental. Investigators noted that without his records, these connections would have remained invisible. One agent later said, "We could see the network locally, but he allowed us to see the international web. He gave us the map no one else could produce." It was a moment of vindication for the driver, but also a reminder of how far the network extended and how much danger still lurked. As global connections came to light, the network began to react. Routes were altered, shipments rerouted, operatives became suspicious. The system was adaptive, and every intervention prompted a countermeasure. The driver understood that he was now part of a dynamic chess game where every move mattered and mistakes could be catastrophic. And yet, he pressed on, driven by a singular understanding the ordinary could reveal the extraordinary, and courage, curiosity, and careful observation could dismantle even the most sophisticated of systems. The operation had reached a critical point. Months of intelligence gathering, documentation, and patient observation were about to culminate in action. Law enforcement agencies, both local and international, coordinated their efforts. Warehouses were surrounded, couriers were traced, and key operatives were under surveillance. It was the largest strike the city had ever seen against a network of this scale. For the delivery driver, it was surreal. From behind the scenes, he watched the system he had exposed begin to unravel. The streets he had driven countless times became the stage for a carefully orchestrated intervention. Each package he had delivered, each irregularity he had documented, now formed the backbone of a case that would shake the underworld. The first raids were executed before dawn. Officers moved silently through industrial zones, apartments, and clandestine storage sites. Hidden compartments were discovered, shipments intercepted, and digital evidence secured. The network, once thought impenetrable, showed signs of panic. Investigators described it as a race against time. "We had to move quickly," one agent said. The network would have adapted the moment they sensed disruption. Every step had to be precise. Meanwhile, the driver remained anonymous, observing from the safety of his home. He felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Each arrest confirmed the importance of his role, but each confrontation reminded him of the danger he had narrowly avoided countless times. The raids revealed more than illegal goods. They revealed people. Young workers who had been exploited, families unknowingly involved, and operators who had devoted their lives to a system they barely understood. The delivery driver saw the human cost of the network he had exposed. One investigator later reflected, "These networks are often faceless in reports, but the reality is always human." The same people who deliver packages or operate warehouses are the ones whose lives are upended. For the driver, this was both a revelation and a burden. He had hoped to expose the system, but the consequences, arrests, loss, fear, were immediate and tangible. It weighed heavily on him, yet he understood that truth carries responsibility, and some risks are necessary to prevent greater harm. During the raids, investigators encountered resistance. Some operatives attempted to destroy evidence. Others fled, leaving trails that had to be meticulously followed. The stakes were real, and the potential for violence high. The delivery driver, who had once navigated the network quietly, now recognized the scale of what he had engaged with. Every package he remembered delivering, every irregularity he had noted, had played a part in dismantling a system that was both sophisticated and dangerous. Experts explained that networks like these are resilient because they are decentralized. Removing one operator rarely collapses the system, but coordinated action, informed by insider intelligence, like that provided by the driver, can strike at the network's core. One of the most significant breakthroughs came when investigators intercepted a shipment linked to high-level operatives coordinating across borders. The delivery driver had identified a subtle pattern months earlier, anomalies in labeling that others had dismissed. That insight now proved critical. Authorities seized millions of dollars in goods and digital evidence, providing the roadmap for further international cooperation. The driver's quiet observations had become the key to dismantling an empire that had operated in the shadows for years. Through it all, the delivery driver remained in the shadows. The pride of contributing to the takedown was intertwined with fear, guilt, and exhaustion. He had witnessed both the downfall of criminals and the collateral consequences for those caught in the system. "I didn't want anyone to get hurt," he admitted in confidential statements. "But I also knew that if this network continued, more people would suffer. I had to keep going, even when it scared me. Psychologists note that whistleblowers in high-stakes operations often face profound psychological pressure, anxiety, hypervigilance, and moral conflict. The driver's experience reflected this precisely: a solitary figure whose courage, curiosity, and sense of responsibility changed the course of an entire network. As the raids continued, the network's leaders realized the extent of exposure. Routes were cut off, communication channels disrupted, and international connections threatened. The system was unraveling, but the story was far from over. For the driver, each development brought a mixture of relief and tension. Relief that the evidence he had painstakingly gathered was making an impact, and tension knowing that powerful people were aware, watching, adapting. He had sparked the unraveling of a billion-dollar network, but the final chapters, the full exposure, the accountability, the repercussions, were still ahead. The final phase of the investigation unfolded like a slow-motion revelation. The network, once vast and elusive, was finally coming into focus. Arrests were made across multiple cities, shipments intercepted, digital ledgers seized, and secret operations laid bare. What had once been invisible, operating in plain sight, now had a name, a map, and faces. And at the center of it all, though largely unseen, was a single delivery driver. The man who had walked quiet streets for months, observing, documenting, surviving. A man who had transformed curiosity into courage, and courage into action that changed the course of a hidden empire. The dismantling of the network rippled through lives. Some operatives faced justice. Families learned of their inadvertent involvement. Businesses were exposed and restructured. And yet, the human cost was undeniable. The delivery driver, reflecting on it all, understood the paradox: shining a light on the dark inevitably revealed shadows in the lives of innocents. Experts emphasized this duality. Exposing criminal networks always has consequences, said one investigator. But without insiders willing to risk themselves, these systems thrive unchecked, and the damage continues, often silently. The driver had carried that burden alone, but his efforts prevented potentially far greater harm. For every package he delivered, every irregularity he noted, he had drawn a line between chaos and accountability. It's tempting to look for heroes in dramatic gestures, in public recognition. Vanish. It evolves. Yet there is hope. The driver's documentation, his meticulous observation, became a blueprint for future operations, a model for law enforcement, a warning to those who think the shadows are invincible. And it serves as a reminder. Change often begins in small, ordinary actions, quietly observed and courageously executed. As the city returned to its rhythm, the delivery driver resumed his life, his work, his streets, his deliveries, carrying a secret that few could ever comprehend. Outside, the world remained unaware of the billions flowing beneath the surface, of the invisible web of commerce, and of the ordinary man who had dared to illuminate it. Sometimes, the most extraordinary heroes are not those who seek recognition, but those who act when no one is watching. They are the quiet observers, the diligent record keepers, the ones who step forward when curiosity meets courage. The delivery driver had exposed a system worth billions, had risked everything to reveal the truth, and had reminded the world of a simple, yet profound lesson: even the smallest role can have the largest impact. And in that revelation, the city, unknowingly, quietly, was changed forever.